We all know that even the most child-friendly Disney films contain subconscious messages and tragic stories. You surely must have cried when Bambi's mom got shot, or when Simba's father Mufasa died in battle while defending his son from his own brother. If you don't know what I'm talking about, did you even have a childhood? But the things you're about to read on this list are so dark and twisted, you may need a tissue or two. And also, we should probably keep this video PG-13. Here are 10 dark Disney movie secrets that will blow your mind. Let's begin. But before that, don't forget to like and share this video with your friends, and hit that subscribe button for your daily dose of videos like this and more. Writer, film producer, and animator Walt Disney was a man responsible for the majority of children's cartoons and animated films we all know and love today. Every Disney movie usually leaves us extremely warm, fuzzy, happy, or crying tears of joy. And the films usually end the same way. Good triumphs over evil, and the good live happily ever after. But according to the secrets and exposes in this list, this may not always be the case. Let's get started. Number 10. Remember Carl from Up? He actually dies in the beginning of the movie. Either you bawled your eyes out on the movie Up or you've never seen it at all. If you belong to the latter, the first part of the movie Up was extremely heartwarming, showing the blissful love story of Carl and Ellie, which reached a very sad end when Ellie passed on because of sickness, leaving Carl a sad, grumpy old man. Then Russell, a young boy from his neighborhood and self-proclaimed wilderness explorer, arrives, and they have magical adventures filled with flying houses and talking animals in true Disney fashion. Here's the twist. A fan theory states that Carl actually passed away and that Russell may be his angel trying to guide him into the afterlife and after his wings, which is represented by a badge. Pretty sad, huh? But brace yourself for more. We've only just begun. Number 9. Andy's mom was the she mentioned in Jessie's song, When She Loved Me. If you're a fan of the Disney and Pixar Toy Story franchise, then you would be familiar with Jessie the cowgirl's emotional song number in Toy Story 2. When her previous owner before Andy and Emily outgrew her and broke her heart in the process. It was one of the movie's most heartbreaking scenes, with a very sad song to accompany it. This led to some very sensible theories that cold-hearted, insensitive Emily actually grew up to be Andy's mom. The timelines and Emily's childhood room theme seem to agree. To top it all off, in the original Toy Story movie, Andy was wearing a hat identical to Jessie's, but Jessie only came into the picture in Toy Story 2. While of course, outgrowing toys are normal for teenage girls and she probably had no way of knowing, the sadness in Jessie's eyes makes this issue a little bit more difficult to let go of. Number 8. Peter Pan is the angel of death. Some very distinct facts of the Peter Pan movie is that Peter, the Lost Boys, Tinkerbell, and anyone in Neverland for that matter are incapable of growing up. Neverland can be found in the sky, on the second star to the right to be exact. But what if the reason they don't grow up is because they are already dead? Spirits of kids who passed away are usually assumed to be angels in the afterlife. This could mean that Neverland can actually be an afterlife for children who die before reaching adulthood, and Peter Pan is an angel of death. Peter appearing at Wendy Darling's home that night would very well be that she too is at the brink of entering the afterlife, which is so sad. Now let's dig deeper. The author of the story, J.M. Barrie, had a brother who died at the age of 13, which is about Peter's age in the story. One of the famous lines from Peter Pan, "To die would be an awfully big adventure," also supports this tragic theory. That just gives me chills. Number 7. Snow White received a kiss of death. And since we're talking about a journey to the afterlife, let's talk about another timeless classic, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. While we have nothing but great memories of this film having a happy ending just like most Disney classics, we may want to think again. On the surface, it seems like a story where a handsome prince finds his princess and lives happily ever after. To refresh your memory a little bit, when Snow White and the prince first met at the forest, her first instinct seemed to be to run away from him. Kind of weird, don't you think? For a human to run away from one of her kind, but has no problem talking to animals and befriending dwarves? Here's a possible explanation. Just like our previous Peter Pan theory, the handsome prince is said to actually be the angel of death, relieving the fair maiden of her suffering once and for all through a true love's kiss. After the kiss, she wakes up and they ride off into a castle in the clouds. What's creepy is this scene's whole setting looks like an actual funeral. Number 6. Frozen and The Shining are the same movie? I know that sounds weird. However, the person who came up with this theory seems to present evidence for everything. From a side-by-side comparison of every single character, such as menacing protagonists that seem to be a danger in their own loved ones for reasons out of their control, who eventually both isolate themselves in cold and dark places. This was supported by some eerily similar scenes, landscapes, and themes from the movie. How can every 7-year-old girl's favorite film be compared to Stanley Kubrick's classic suspense thriller from the 1980s? Could it be that filmmakers have some sort of official template when it comes to making films, and these two just happen to fall under the same one? Or could this theory be totally false? The possibilities are endless. Although some people are not convinced, it does not mean it is completely a hoax. In fact, the theory is covered in 8 different exhibits, and some similarities are so uncanny, this person might just be up to something. Also, if you're the type who would want to investigate, you can make a movie marathon out of it and tell us what you think in the comments section. We've just reached the second half of our list. Brace yourselves, it's about to get even freakier from here on out. But first, hit that subscribe button. Number 5. An alternate ending to Hunchback of Notre Dame. For those who don't know, the movie Hunchback of Notre Dame was actually inspired by a novel by Victor Hugo released in the 1980s. The Disney adaptation of this novel is considered the darkest Disney animated movie ever made. The movie ends with Quasimodo giving Esmeralda his blessing by letting her go and be with someone else, despite the obvious fact that Quasimodo was instantly in love with her. And of course, the true Disney fashion, the good triumphs over evil. The novel, on the other hand, had a different ending, and it goes like this. Quasimodo betrays Esmeralda after she refuses to love him, which led to her death by hanging. He grows depressed about what had happened and lays with Esmeralda's lifeless body until he dies of hunger. Their bodies were found 18 months later, stuck together, and when an attempt is made to separate them, Quasimodo's burn turned to dust. I'm not sure how I can ever move on from the mental picture stuck in my head right now. Maybe we should move on to our next mind-blowing Disney theory. Number 4. Boo from Monsters, Inc. is the witch from Brave. There have been plenty of rumors throughout the years that claim that all Pixar animations are from the same universe. So that alone supports the theory you're about to dive into now. If you've seen Brave, you will know that the ability to transport into different doorways is something our friends from Monsters, Inc. are actually capable of doing. While Boo is a human being, could it be that she learned a few tricks from her scarer friend Solly? The timelines would require a little sci-fi knowledge, which we won't be discussing in detail. Long story short, Brave takes place hundreds of years before Monsters, Inc. But in the witch's workshop, there exists a wooden carving of none other than Solly himself, which would be weird because Solly would only come to existence centuries later. Could this mean that Boo can not only teleport to different places, but different timelines as well? The theory states that Boo eventually learns time travel to find Solly, and goes back to the source, and later on discovering a power she never imagined having. Number 3. Alice from Alice in Wonderland was on drugs? This debate has been going on for decades. Non-believers would say, why on earth would Disney publish a film about illegal substances for everyone, including underage children, to see, considering that Alice, the protagonist, was merely a little girl? But get this, the Disney film was released in the 50s, which was a time where many people experimented with drugs, especially opium and LSD, which is known to cause hallucinations similar to this film. And although author Lewis Carroll denied ever using hallucinogenic drugs, the film could still very well be inspired by it. He is a writer after all. I mean, drinking potions that make you shrink and grow in size, eating mushrooms, chasing after a rabbit who seems to be extremely tardy, and a hookah-smoking caterpillar. There are several similarities between a psychedelic trip and Alice's trip to Wonderland, and no matter how many non-believers are shunned, it seems this theory is here to stay. Number 2. Elsa and Anna's parents survived the shipwreck and became Tarzan's parents. If you thought we were done with the Frozen theories on the first half of this list, surprise! Here's a good one for you Frozen fans, and it involves another one of Disney's great films, Tarzan. If you haven't seen Frozen, here's a little background for you. The protagonists are sisters, and their parents, who happen to be the king and queen of Arendelle, the kingdom where they are from, dies in a tragic shipwreck, leaving the two princesses, Elsa and Anna, orphans. But the story is not about what happens in the rest of the film. It's about what really happened to their parents. On a Reddit AMA, Frozen director Jennifer Lee confirmed that the king and queen did not actually die at shipwreck. They were said to have ended up washed out in a jungle, on a deserted island, who later on met their tragic end, being eaten by leopards. It was said that they survived long enough to give birth to a little boy. Does this sound familiar? It's because their son was actually Tarzan, which makes him Elsa and Anna's long-lost brother and an actual Disney prince. Isn't that just crazy? Now, it's time to move on to the last, but definitely not the least Disney theory that will blow your mind. Number 1. Nemo died with his mother and his siblings in Finding Nemo. The beginning of the movie Finding Nemo is somewhat tragic, with an attack killing a whole family of fish, with Marlin and his son Nemo being the only survivors. But of course, conspiracy theorists just had to take the tragedy up a notch. A theory suggests that Nemo never actually survived the attack, and he was just a fragment on Marlin's subconscious as he tries to deal with the loss of his entire family. He used Nemo to get him through the 5 stages of grieving, with all stages clearly presented throughout the film. Denial. Marlin refuses to let Nemo go to school. Anger. He goes ballistic when Nemo swims too far. Bargaining. He believes he can rescue Nemo. Despair, seeing Nemo get flushed. Acceptance, letting go. Knowing all this, even the title of the film sends shivers down my spine. Was Nemo ever found? The answer is no, as he was never there at all. I think I'll need that tissue now. Any other dark Disney movie secrets you want to shed light on? Sound off in the comments section. We would love to hear from you. But for now, it's time to sign off and maybe cry a little more. Don't forget to like, share, and hit subscribe.